Welcome to Module 6. This week we will be talking about cognitive behavioral interventions for students with behavior problems and or disabilities. I hope everyone is doing well. We'll start with the review of Module 5, and in this week we'll have a pretty quick lecture on cognitive behavioral interventions. There's not a whole lot to cover. There's definitely a number of strategies to use for independent learning, but I won't spend a lot of time during this lecture talking through those. I'd like to give you an opportunity to engage with another IRIS module. We have an article that I want us to think about as it relates to cognitive behavioral interventions with students who've experienced trauma. And then also I want you to spend this week really trying to get into your classrooms to do observations and get your consent form signed, etc. So we'll have a pretty quick lecture, and then the rest of the time you can spend focusing on the other things you need to tackle as it relates to your FBA assignment. So we'll talk a little bit more about those follow-up pieces at the end of this lecture. So just a review of Module 5, this talks about the steps that we need to take to complete or conduct your FBA. And so again, you want to make sure that you develop an operational definition. I read through some of your, or most of your reflections last night, and a few of you were struggling with having operational definitions that were measurable, observable, and specific. And I gave a couple of you a suggestion that said there's no such thing as being too specific. Like you probably will feel a little silly saying, if Johnny raises his C3 at 3 inches above the chair for more than 5 seconds, then this will be considered out of seat behavior. Those are the sorts of things that we want to do, at least in this phase, to really help you become more familiar with what observable, measurable, specific sorts of operational definitions look like. And over time, you'll get a better feeling for what information you do and don't need to include. So for now, if you feel like it's too specific, that's okay. The idea is that you want to make sure that given your definition, I could come into your classroom, or a substitute teacher could come in, or any other practitioner could come into your classroom, use the same definition, and observe the same behavior, collect the same data given that definition. So I hope that's clear to everyone. You want to make sure that someone else can use your operational definition and be able to identify the same exact behavior. So if you have a student who you're targeting a challenging behavior such as kicking, and you define kicking as swinging foot and or leg in the air, right? What if he's just standing, he or she is standing by his or her chair and just kind of swinging his leg? Would that be considered kicking? So you want to think about that. Does kicking mean he or she needs to come in contact with another person, with another item or object in the classroom? Do they need to lift their leg a certain number of inches off the floor? And those things start to get a bit, it sounds a little trivial, but it's important to think about that. Because some students need sensory or exercise breaks, right? So have you ever had your foot go to sleep and you just kind of stand up by your chair and swing your leg a little bit? So those are the sorts of things we don't want to confuse your operational definition with another behavior that you're not targeting, okay? So you want to develop a clear operational definition. You want to be able to describe the setting events and the antecedents that predict when the behavior will or will not occur. You then describe the consequences of the problem. So what happens after the student kicks another peer, okay? What happens? Does the teacher respond in a certain way? Does the student manage his or her own behavior chart? What is the consequence of that behavior? Okay, and then you want to verify that your setting events or your antecedents and the consequences are all aligned. So this is where you're going to be doing your ABC data collection. And based on that data, you'll develop a summary statement that is essentially a hypothesis that you will be testing to connect to the to your behavior intervention plan. So again, we're not actually going to implement the books in this particular class, but you really want to be thoughtful about how your FBA is connected to your book. Okay. So again, this is how you develop your summary statement or your hypothesis. You want to make sure that you include the connection between the setting events, the antecedent, the target behavior, and the function. Okay, so this is really the foundation for a supportive plan for your behavior intervention plan. So be sure to use this as a guide. So pause here for a moment and just think about cognitive behavioral interventions. What are they? Sometimes they're referred to as cognitive behavioral therapy. Okay? What do you know about CBIs? And for whom are they effective? If there are certain populations of people who engage in cognitive behavioral therapy. And then take a moment to think about how you might use CBI, cognitive behavioral interventions, within the context of your classrooms. Okay? So just take a moment, jot down some notes about what you know about it so far, how you might use it in your classroom, and for whom it may be effective. So cognitive behavioral therapy it's not, the first thing to know is that it's not an actual therapy in and of itself. It's actually a collection of varied interventions. They're all pretty similar, but cognitive behavioral therapy isn't one just specific therapy, right? There are three primary assumptions of CBT. One is that our thoughts and our beliefs impact our behavior. So whatever it is that we're thinking and believing about our circumstance or what might happen, things like anxiety, all of those thoughts and beliefs have an impact on the way we behave. The second assumption is that our changes in our thoughts and beliefs can lead to changes in our behavior. So if we change the way we think and believe about particular circumstances, then our behavior can change as well. And then the third assumption of CBT is that everybody is an active participant in their own life. So every student in your classroom has the ability to engage in shaping his or her own process. And cognitive behavioral interventions are based on the principles of ABA. So you'll see as we go through the lecture that there are some similarities in terms of the behavioral principles. And then again, it's not a single therapy in and of itself. It's a combination of varied but very similar self-help, sort of self-driven interventions. Okay? So how are they useful? Why are we using cognitive behavioral interventions in a classroom setting? Well, as you read in your chapter for this week, they've been demonstrated to be successful in shaping behaviors, particularly in special education settings. There's less dependence on teachers for reinforcement. So when students are able to use cognitive behavioral interventions, they're often providing their own reinforcement. They're engaging in strategies to self-monitor and to adapt, adjust their behaviors as needed. They're problem solving on their own. And so in these instances, there is not as much of a need for external control, be it from teachers or teacher assistants or other professionals in the school setting. The other great thing about CBIs is that it's a proactive strategy, right? Students are engaging in self-management strategies. They're using a checklist to check in on their anger level or their depression level. And so checking in on these in advance is a proactive strategy that helps to prevent common behaviors that may occur in the future having not engaged in those strategies. Again, students have the autonomy and being able to manage their own behaviors. And then there's more generalization, and this goes back to the second point, because the reinforcement isn't as connected to an external control, right? So because the teacher is not constantly providing reinforcement, the student is often providing his or her own reinforcement, and that leads to more generalization because that person, that student, can generalize his or her self-management strategy in multiple contexts. So you can use an anger check-in scale, whether you're at home, whether you're on the bus, whether you're in a math classroom or at recess. And if you're giving yourself reinforcement, right, if you're checking it off on a scale, and perhaps that is in and of itself reinforcing for you, then that works in multiple settings, and you're not relying on the teacher to give you reinforcement when you're on the bus, because that won't work, right? So having your own internally controlled strategies related to marginalization across settings. So there are a number of self-management interventions, and we'll talk about those first. Then we'll go into the second set of CBI interventions. So self-monitoring is one self-management intervention. In this case, students have the opportunity to observe and record their own behavior. So they can either observe the frequency or the time, the duration of their behavior. In order to engage in a self-monitoring procedure, those students have to be aware of their behavior. They have to know what that target behavior is, and then they have to know how to record it. So we have to develop a recording system. Some students use little clickers where they just count to frequency. Some students use recording sheets where they have to put a tick on the page for each occurrence of that behavior. We know that self-monitoring strategies help to improve both social and academic behaviors. So you could use this in a number of settings. And again, the students need to be trained first. You can't just expect that they will start self-monitoring independently. So they have to know how to use the tools that you're using to monitor their behavior recording. So here's a quick video you can watch on how to use a self-monitoring machine. And then this is the second video. I think we may watch this in during another module this semester, but I want us to go back to it and just look again and see how these students are using their self-monitoring tools and reinforcement practices in the classroom. So take a moment here and just think about how might you use or adapt the strategies you saw in these videos in your classroom. And then, do you think self-monitoring strategies could be useful for your target student? So for the student you've identified that you will be working with this semester for your FBA, do you think you might engage in or employ any self-monitoring strategies for your student given what you know so far? Some of you might not be there yet if you haven't had a chance to observe. But for those of you that have, just think about whether or not you might want to use some cognitive behavioral interventions with your students. And then finally, if you're not already familiar with them, how will you strengthen your knowledge of and use of cognitive behavioral interventions? So just pause here and jot a few notes for these reflection questions. And you don't need to submit these, this is just for you to be able to engage. So the next self-management intervention is self-evaluation, and this is extremely helpful. I like self-evaluation a lot because it's useful across ages and stages and grades, right? So students are able to compare their behavior to a preset standard. So if your standard for the day is that your student has 8 yeses in each column, then that's the preset standard. And he or she knows that I need to have at least 8 yeses in order to earn my reimbursement. So first, again, the student needs to know how to self-monitor. They need to know what it is they're looking for. So if you're asking them to use a respectful tone of voice and use respectful words in a tone of voice, they need to know exactly what that is. So this is where your operational definition becomes important, not only for you, but also for your students, so they know exactly what it is they need to know how to monitor. Okay? You need to think about using words like respectful. Is that observable, measurable, and specific? Right? So you might have to use some other sort of scale to really help your student get a better understanding of what a respectful tone, both voice tone and or respectful words are. So it may be that you have a list of words that should and should not be used. So you may have to do that systematically. The teacher should set that criteria. So you want to work together with your student to set the criteria and then to make sure your student understands what those criteria are. A lot of times we use rating scales, so sometimes like a 1 through 5 rating scale to evaluate how a student performed after a particular activity or class. And then finally, students need teacher feedback on their performance. So you still have to provide that reinforcement even after the students engage in the self-evaluation. And one of the things you can see this example on the right hand side of the screen is like a teacher agrees. So he or she can get some bonus points if the teacher agrees with his data collection based on his self-evaluation. Okay. Another self-management intervention is self-reinforcement. So you'll see for some of these management interventions, self-management interventions or reinforcement is sort of embedded, but it could also be its own self-management intervention. So as opposed to a traditional reinforcement where we think a lot about another adult or an adult in the classroom providing reinforcement, during self-reinforcement, the student is able to select whatever reinforcer he or she wants, and then they deliver it following the appropriate behavior. So in order to teach this self-reinforcement strategy, students have to be able to both monitor and evaluate their behavior. So they can't just acknowledge when they engage in a particular behavior, they have to also know how to evaluate whether or not that was more positive or a maladaptive behavior. And then they get to decide on internal or external reinforcement. Sometimes students are intrinsically motivated by just working with the self-management intervention. They don't always need a lot of external reinforcement. But if they do, you want to make sure that you set clear criteria for when you can engage in that reinforcement. So you see this little example. She says, Miss Toy, I met my goal, and now I'm going to use some extra computer time. So she's reinforcing herself. She knows what her criteria were. She met her goal, and now she's going to go use the computer for her reinforcement. And she's just kind of checking in to let the teacher know the teacher is not having any control over those components of her self-management. Okay? So we'll take a quick break here. This lecture isn't very long, but if you need a break, feel free to take one, and then when we come back, we'll move along to verbal mediation-based interventions. So with self-instructional training, students use verbal prompts to guide their behavior. Gotta have a picture here. I think it's easy to design that way. Students use verbal prompts, so they might have a list of verbal prompts that are motivating for them, like somebody else says. This might be hard, but you can do. Things like you've done this before. Felt angry before, but you got through it. Those sorts of things that help you with self-instructional training. So coping strategies, and this can be useful both in academic challenges and for behavioral problems. So literally students are just kind of talking themselves through whatever the challenge might be. And clearly, because you're using verbal prompts to guide behavior, this is most often equipped with the students who have verbal language. Alternate response training. This is another verbal mediation-based intervention. And in this case, students were taught alternative responses, so in the business of replacement behavior. So they have to be able to first monitor their behavior, and then they also need to be able to engage in replacement behavior. And using the alternate response training requires some external reinforcement, so you might have to provide a reinforcement as a teacher. So, for example, if a student is constantly doing here, let's say little Mariah is having trouble keeping things to herself. So every 3 or 4 minutes she's saying, sorry. The first step is that Mariah has to know that eating her kid is an unacceptable behavior. She has to acknowledge when she's getting her kid. Okay, so she has to be able to sort of evaluate that. And then she needs to be able to engage in replacement behavior. So you might have to teach her that replacement behavior. So if you teach her to tap her legs instead, maybe her hitting her ears if she needs to tap her legs instead, that's an appropriate replacement behavior. Every time you see her engage in an appropriate replacement behavior, you should provide to the replacement. So I think alternate response training makes it pretty clear how these cognitive behavioral interventions are derived from behavior analysis. And just clear connections here to education behavior, how we enforce it. So they're very closely related to principles of behavior. Another verbal mediation-based intervention is problem-solving training. This picture is a book. This is a picture of a book called Managing Difficult Behaviors, and I haven't read it, but I've read a few reviews about it, so it might be something worth looking into to find more strategies for managing behavior in elementary level classrooms. Okay. So with problem-solving training, you want to find an effective way to reduce problem behavior and aggression. And this is really an approach to be, again, more proactive and hopefully not as reactive. We want to use instructions that help students approach and then analyze, evaluate, and solve problems. So again, in order to be able to follow these steps, the student has to be able to recognize that the problem exists. So if Mariah doesn't even realize that hitting her ear is a problem, then she's not going to be able to work on problem solving. Okay? So you have to be able to find the problem. You have to be able to create an operational definition of what that problem behavior is. You need to generate solutions. Okay? How can you solve this problem? And then you want to evaluate the solutions. How effective are those solutions? Are they stopping the problem behavior from occurring again? And then you want to be able to implement a plan. So this is what we're going to do to avoid engaging in this problem behavior. And then you want to monitor the solution to make sure that it's constantly effective over time. Okay? So this is problem solving. And here is a quick video that you can take a look at. Gives you a little more information on problem solving. And it gives a specific example of a problem solving curriculum that's been developed for elementary age students. Another verbal mediation-based intervention is anger control training. So in this intervention, students are taught to control their anger through set instructions, and then they're essentially using practices that prepare them to be provoked. So they already know that on the bus there's this one particular student, a group of students who sometimes creating a trigger situation for them. And so they prepare for them those sorts of situations in advance, and they talk themselves through, there's not going to be a need to argue because I know how to handle this situation. Okay? Or they are able to cope with the arousal. So if it's already happened, if they've already been triggered, right, that the student is here, said something inappropriate, then they can calm themselves down or cope with the arousal as they can. So you can take a deep breath and handle the situation. And you can also reflect and resolve it. So the last time this happened, I was able to handle the situation. I got ill without getting okay? So these are examples of anger control strategies that students can use. And then finally, we talk a little bit about rational and emotive behavioral therapy. And so the premise of this is really that emotional and behavioral changes are a result of how we think about them. So it goes back to what we said at the beginning of the lecture. It's a combination of cognitive, emotive, and behavioral therapies. And it's designed to help students and teachers manage a challenging behavior. So in this case, students and teachers work together to manage behavior. And there are three major principles of the REBT. The first is that the students are the sum of their experiences. Okay? So you have to acknowledge that students represent, they are the sum of their experiences. And so their experiences have contributed to their behaviors and who they are and how they respond to other people and how they respond to other behaviors. You also have to acknowledge that students are responsible for their own emotions and reactions. I think in special education, we struggle with this sometimes because we are often caught up on what particular disability category a student falls into and how we can support him or her given this disability. And we know that there are particular challenges associated with some disability categories, but it's still important to understand that students are responsible for their own emotions and actions. And we want to acknowledge that students have emotions and feelings that are always connected to their disability. We don't want to ignore the fact that our students with disabilities have it. So I think that's something important to implement. And then you also want to acknowledge that harmful emotions and challenging behaviors are a result of irrational thinking. Sometimes we disseverate on certain things that have happened in the past, or our anxieties will create some irrational thinking. And a lot of times these harmful emotions or challenging behaviors are a result of those thinking patterns. So how can you implement CBIs in the classroom? The first step is to conduct a functional behavioral assessment, which is what we're in the process of doing now. So that's what we'll use your data, your EPA data. The second step is to plan a program. So this is where you're going to be thinking more along the lines of a book. You want to choose a procedure that's appropriate. You want to teach your student how to use that strategy. You want to be able to implement the strategy with fidelity. You want to make sure that you're implementing it correctly. And then you want to monitor the progress. So if you're using an anger management strategy and you're not seeing a lot of progress over time, you want to need to revisit that. And then you want to engage internalization strategies. So you want to make sure that your student is able to use those strategies in different settings and under different conditions. But different conditions is when it's challenging if the reinforcement is still external to the student. So over time, you have to work on fading that reinforcement so that when the student is in a new setting, the strategy will still work, even though they may not be receiving reinforcement. So that part is a little harder. But you can definitely implement CBIs in the classroom. And I'm sure many of you have heard of them, sometimes referred to as independent learning, self-management strategies. So here is another IS module that helps you to think more about program-based interventions, helps you to think more about how students can become independent learners. I encourage you again to use this as much or as little as you need to. If you are familiar with program-based cognitive behavioral interventions, I keep saying CBI. I keep thinking about program-based instruction because of the same method. But so, anyways, if you are familiar with cognitive behavioral interventions and you don't feel like you need to use a module, then that's okay. If you want to spend some time learning a little bit more, you have an opportunity to review some case studies and to hear a little bit more about how students can become independent learners by monitoring their own behavior, evaluating their own behavior, and then reinforcing positive behavior. So the IS modules are really great. I actually helped work on a couple of them a few years ago, and so I hope that you find them useful. It's really not meant to be like a easy book so that I really want you to use them if you feel they're useful for you, and I want you to know that they're good. So that is another activity that we can use as a support. Okay. So again, I said that was going to be a pretty quick lecture because it's not too quick of a chapter. Some time to focus on some of the pieces this week. So the first is to read chapter 7. Just making sure that that's right. It's chapter 7. And then you also have your Russian 2015 article to read. And then I'd like you to submit your weekly reflections with grades on the article. So this article talks about, I'll double check the author's name on this, but this article focuses on CBI for students who have experienced trauma. So I don't know how many of you have students in your classroom who have experienced trauma, but I want you to reflect on the use of CBI for students who have experienced trauma. And just provide a general reflection of what you learned in that article. So your only assignment for this week is to submit your review reflection. And then the other big thing for this week is to continue to work on your FBA assignment. So you need to obtain parental consent, you need to be starting your observations and your settings. And then you want to make sure that you upload a copy of the content into Moodle. So I push the due date back to this Friday. Hopefully by Friday you will have submitted those. It's not a major assignment, but it is worth one point because I want to make sure that you submit them. But aside from that, it's not a major assignment for you, but you can't start your FBA data collection until you get those points of consent. So it is critical. It is mandatory in that regard. So hopefully you're getting into your placements and starting observations. I see that most of you have, started meeting with your teachers and at least maybe schedules for when you'll be in the classroom. Your FBA assignment is due on March 4th, so a little less than a month, so you definitely want to be in the classrooms and observing as much as possible. I have uploaded an example FBA assignment in Moodle, so you'll see in the FBA assignment folder, see some examples of ABC data collection, and then you also see a full example of an FBA assignment. So hopefully that helps you give you a better picture of what to submit. And then the last thing before we wrap up for this module is that we will have an online Q&A session on Sunday, February 25th at 8 p.m. That will be the Google Hangout. So I'll send out a link for that as it gets closer. And this will give you an opportunity to ask any questions you might have related to the FBA assignment or any other questions you have related to it corresponding topics. So this will be a Google Hangout section where you can chat virtually, see your faces, you'll be able to see your peers who also hop on. It'll sort of be like an open office hour from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. So it'd be great if everyone can hop on at 8 so that we're not having to repeat. Try to keep everyone on the same page, but if you can't hop on right at 8, that's fine. I would imagine that, the first 30 minutes, if you can't, let's put it this way, if you can't get on at 8, try to get on at 8:30, and then by that point we can sort of review what we've already talked about, or we can kind of have it split into two sections. So we'll do a repeat beginning at 8:30 or so. So that is Sunday, February 25th. Your FBAs are due on March 4th. And again, this week, I hope that you're able to obtain your words of consent if you haven't already. And if you're able to start doing your observations and collecting data with your students. And again, I have open office hours, so if you need to schedule, not open, but by appointment. So if you want to schedule a time to chat more about your country behaviors assessment assignment, please let me know. Happy to meet with you. I have one person that is excited for you. And as always, let me know